call itself has come a long ways. I mean, guys used to go out and they had these rattlers, and you stuck a call in it and you shook it, and to get your feeder chuckle, or you whack, 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 whack with it. And you know, they've evolved so much from being made out of strictly just wood. How long do you figure it takes them to make one of them? I mean, that's
I have no idea.
That's a hell of a lot of hand carving, huh?
Whether he sat around with a little kerosene lamp on and just did it at night. You know, it was 1904.
Oh wow, so that's been around for a while.
So it's been there and done it, you know. It's very, very old.
I've seen a lot of ducks hit the water, huh?
Well, I would hope it did. You know, out here we never even heard of a blowing duck call. You know. Gosh, there was very few guys that blew a mouth duck call when I was in high school, which was the 70s.
They all use them.
Scotch shakers.
Yeah, I've
seen so many guys.
Seen so many guys out there just.
They worked, but you know you can't compete with today's call.
No, nowadays you're getting some. You know, most calls were wood calls. They were carved, and a lot of people started off with a whistle. For some reason, I want to say it was the Indians who first started using a duck call. If I remember correct, they were one of the first to use like a Nova Scotia duck toller. They were one of the first to start using decoys, and you know, they would decoy the birds in. They would throw a net over them, and I think as they got more into it, they started calling. And so you have a lot of wooden calls. You have a lot of shaker style calls that all come out of that early duck hunting stage. And I mean, duck calls, they used to get them real big, or they'd get them real small, you know, big tone boards on them. You know, I've seen duck calls that if you fell over the boat with that thing on your neck, you's gonna drown.
And calls that I picked out, of course they were all the good ones.
All the ones he really didn't want to give up?
Yeah, right. And then finally he just says, well, why don't you buy the whole collection? And I said, well, add them up, see what you think they're worth. And he added them up.
I guess to me, calls have evolved from being kind of a single quack to not doing your cadence to really, you're talking to the bird. You are talking to the bird in their own language, and you're bringing them to you. And you know, overall, calls have come a long ways to where your acrylics aren't affected with the cold. Some of your polycarbs are. I know I have a couple wood calls that once they get real wet, they expand and I lose my tone. So I've really grown fond of acrylic calls, which I run all acrylic calls because I've never had one come out of tune from being cold. A lot of the wood calls, you know, they expand and contract with the temperature outside or how much moisture's in them, or, you know, as you're calling, your spit gets in them and they start to expand a little bit more, and that's going to change your tone board. So that's where I lean more towards a acrylic call, and that's just the way the call has evolved over time as people have found a better material to make the call out of. You know, I want a louder call, so we're going to tune the tone board like this, whereas you know, back in the old day, they were using copper and all sorts of stuff for their reeds, mylar and all sorts of stuff for the reeds on their duck calls, and they were real sharp and pointed. And nowadays you're squared off, and like your short reed calls, your goose calls, I mean, your reed's only about yay big, and that just makes some of the goosiest notes you never imagine. And you know, goose flutes, you were a lot of moaning, and they didn't really make them high clucks or anything like that. And nowadays, people can sound like a middle, high, and a low goose all at the same time out of one call. And that's just the way the call has evolved over the years. And